Hello all. So once again, forever since I made a video, and once again, this video is going to be pretty gosh darn poor in quality. And once again, it might be years before I make another video. I literally just do this every once in a great while whenever I feel it's kind of important to say something. I definitely feel it's kind of important to say this. Um, this is going to be an odd video. This is going to be a long video, but I feel like I got to cover all this. So, Excision is a horror flick that I saw a long time ago. I've now seen it multiple times, and it has definitely grown on me a lot over the years. And ever since the first time I saw this movie, I've wanted to have the discussion I'm about to have right now, but I never did. Because I knew if I had that talk, I'd have to go over my sexuality in more detail than I've ever done before. And I wasn't sure if I was up to that. But obviously, a lot of stuff just happened. And if you're watching this a couple months from now, what just happened is Trump in the US won the election, and one of that man's main talking points and the people around him's main talking points has been a massive propaganda campaign against primarily the trans community, of course, other races, and a lot of other communities. I don't want to downplay any specific community, obviously, and blatantly, but there was definitely a massive push against the trans community. And when you bash one queer community, it's they just lump them all together. That's what always happens. Um, and there's a real push in the U.S. because of Trump, who will become president again somehow. He has stated that he's going to make schools not woke and change curriculums, and basically try to somehow outlaw being trans. How that would even be applicable, nobody knows, including him. But the point is, if he were to pull all that stuff out, and he were to change the school system, the end result is the only way he could pull a lot of that off is if censorship was used, is if censorship went into place. And in media. And on top of that, I have this genuinely feel that media has now seen Trump win this election that he won by a pretty big landslide, and we'll see it that he mostly, well, only ran on hate. He did, however you want to crack it, but they'll see that he won because of that, and media will be like, okay, and he hates queer people, and he won the election, so maybe we should stop selling to queer communities and start selling to his side a bit more. Because, media, Netflix, Hollywood, Blumhouse, any company that you talk about, they really are a business, and if they get a sense that, oh, having an extra character that might be queer, that's not a selling point anymore. Now these guys are the selling point. It could really lead to, I fear, a great censorship on top of all the other horrible things that I'm sure will happen. So it kind of just made me realize if I want to do any good, I need to talk more openly and more often about queerness because that's what I am. And that's the only way I can try to help normalize it and thus fight any propaganda that might happen. And this whole election just kind of cemented that idea into my head. And I thought, okay, maybe I should actually have that talk about that weird, ultra disturbing movie that's kind of oddly about my sexuality that I never felt comfortable about talking about. Maybe I actually should have that talk. So let's have that talk. Excision is an ultra disturbing horror film that I sincerely believe, though probably accidentally, is about being aegosexual and being in the closet. Let's go over it. What is Excision about? Excision is an ultra disturbing horror film that revolves around a main character called Pauline. She's kind of a regular teenager that goes to high school but has a really, really, really crummy life. Her family is mostly unsupportive to her. She has no friends outside of her own sister. And the worst of all is her mother, who is extremely unsupportive to the point where if she says she loves her, she clearly doesn't mean it, and is constantly on her back about everything that she does. There's also often push on Pauline, the main character, to act more hetero, to act more straight, to fit in line more. There's a program that her mom wants her to take part of that is basically a basic etiquette program. You know, stand up just straight. Here's the proper way to dance. Here's how you hold a fork. And it's meant to be for a much younger group, but Pauline, is pushed into it by her mom. And her mom makes it clear several times that the program is a good way to get a husband. So the program itself becomes kind of a stand-in for acting straight, getting that husband, fitting into that normative, as it were. Um, and this family environment for her just obviously and blatantly sucks. Now, Pauline has in the film very intense, very strong, very detailed, here's the disturbing element of the film, sexual fantasies. And these sexual fantasies revolve around things that, if carried out, would be harmful to herself and extremely harmful to her partner. We're talking about stuff like, so trigger warnings. I hope I put trigger warnings. There's a lot of trigger warnings in this film, but you should have read the details on this video. Okay. Her fantasies revolve around kinks such as extreme blood play, self-harm, self-mutilation, harming others, death, doing bad things with corpses, and more extreme blood play. Blood play seems to be the focus, but it's to extreme level that if she tried to undertake it, it would cause severe blood loss and death. Now, it should be noted that even though these fantasies that she has are so violent and dangerous, they're positive for her. She sees them as empowering, and in the movie, she is clearly using the fantasies as a coping tool. The worse her life gets, the more she fantasizes to try and combat her horrible life and build herself up. The more she sinks into these fantasies, the more overwhelming they become, and we get a spiral situation. And the movie just builds and builds and builds until the main character, Pauline, only sees the only way to survive in her life is to explore her fantasies fully. And then we got extreme, ultra disturbing horror film. And that's the basic plot and the basic setup of the movie. All right. Now, how does this movie revolve around aegosexuality, and asexuality, which is why I am, and being in the closet, and the narrative that I feel is trying to state? Well, first off, I should state it's probably all accidental. Aegosexuality is not a well-known sexuality, and I highly doubt the directors knew of it. But my goodness, there is a lot of stuff here that really fits. So, big coincidences. Maybe the scriptwriter was in the closet and just didn't know it. Entirely plausible. Entirely plausible. But it's a micro label. We are talking about a micro label. They probably didn't know. I'm guessing they didn't. So, breakdown of asexuality, and more importantly in this specific case, aegosexuality. So asexuality, you probably already know. It's a bit more well known at this point, but means you're simply not sexually attracted to other people. Very straightforward. Aegosexuality is a micro label. It's a bit more specific. It means you're not sexually attracted to other people, but you are attracted to sex in of itself or sexual concepts, but you don't relate it to others. This often results in stuff like you thinking sex is sexy, but if you try to attach yourself to it, it can become very uncomfortable and you don't know how to respond. So this typically results in things like enjoying sexual literature, pornography, um, having fantasies, what have you, but uh, actually relating it to yourself or being drawn to a specific person or wanting to do something with a specific person, that's not going to happen because you're not actually attracted to other people because that's how it works. Okay, so how does this movie even relate to that? How? Well, this comes down to the personal stuff and why I had a hard time talking about this movie in this way, but always felt like I should talk about this movie in this way. Pauline's fantasies never actually have her. It is the same actress, the same person playing the part, but in every fantasy, her hair's done slightly different and her makeup's done slightly different. And the character that plays her keeps evolving and changing as the fantasy goes. Sometimes she has really long hair that goes down in waves, sometimes it's in a bob, other times she's made up differently, often she dresses differently. Often it's in an exaggerated kind of gaudy way. Obviously, like I said, the fantasies are a coping tool, so they build her up so she looks kind of lavish and extraordinary, but it's always slightly different. And yeah, that's how the fantasy works when you're ego. You don't fantasize about yourself and you don't fantasize about other people you know. It's a separation because you're not attracted to anybody. You're just fantasizing about the act in of itself. And that's how her fantasies work. She doesn't fantasize about herself. She has a stand-in. And all the people around her in the fantasies are all just stand-ins too. None of the fantasies relate to anyone she actually knows. There's a scene where she kind of becomes obsessed with the idea of having sex because her sexual fantasies are very positive. So she decides to have sex with a guy, and she literally just picks a dude at random. And it's very clear she has no actual sexual interest in him himself, but is far more interested in the activity and is far more curious. And when they actually have sex, it's curious. It's very clear that she's just doing it for that curiosity, and the pleasure that she receives from it is just from the activity itself. She's very clearly not into the guy, and she even has one of her fantasies while doing it to try and make the act more enjoyable, because the act itself isn't necessarily enjoyable. So those things are big vibes. There's also just the massive amount. This is where I said it's allegory about being in the closet. There's just the massive amount of pressure on this character to be straight, to fit in. Her mom is racist. Her mom is ableist. She would be queerphobic too. There's no ifs and or buts about it. Um, she is so right leaning. She would have voted for Trump in the election that happened several times over if she could. So it's quite clear her mom would not be accepting of her sexuality. So it's quite clear that she is in the closet, and the program that she's being forced to do is literally a program about how to better be straight. Um, it's of course made to seem to be proper etiquette and proper holding spoons and what have you, but it's very clearly that she's there to act straight and learn how to be straight. Um, so those are the reasons why I get those vibes from this movie. And there's another thing that should be noted. This is a personal theory I have, not proven, but personal theory. And that is that I haven't talked to enough to confirm, but I do think that with egosexuals, all the fantasies we tend to be into tend to be stuff that's not technically possible, that are exaggerated, over the top, and just ridiculous when you think about it. I think this is the case because it gives an extra layer of separation. It's not possible, so you know it can't happen, and therefore it's more sexy because it's less related to yourself. So this is why I said I have to go into myself a bit. You know those silly books on Amazon that's like Bigfoot fell in love with the Loch Ness and they had a wonderful honeymoon? Yeah, it's my fault those books are a thing. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I am not sorry. But yeah, it is my fault those books are a thing. So yeah, I'm not into the dangerous, harmful sexuality that is showcased in the film, not into self harm or any of that, but am into ridiculous, not actually technically possible stuff. And to make it clear, the sexual fantasies in this are dangerous and it's disturbing for a reason, but they're also exaggerated. The level of blood in these fantasies from the blood play is not technically possible. It's ridiculous. It doesn't actually make sense. So even though I can't relate to the specific kinks, there is that exaggeration element that I also get and I also relate to. So no, I'm not a psychopath like the character in this movie, if you're starting to be concerned. I like my ultra campy Loch Ness monster making out with Bigfoot. Thank you very much. Shrek like light fluff fluff. Um, I'm not going to go into any more detail. I've given you enough. But my point stands. Um, those are the reasons why I feel that this is about um, aegosexuality. Um, and I feel that this is basically just an allegory for the harm of being in the closet. She's forced more and more to try and act straight, and if she could just talk about what's going on in her head, maybe she could work it out, but she just never can, and thus she sinks deeper and deeper and deeper into this like spiral of just becoming more and more obsessed with the coping tool that is their fantasies until they get out of control. And usually with being in closet, obviously that's external harm that you're doing to yourself. This movie just flips it on the head and makes it, instead of internal harm, it's external harm. And that's really the only difference. Instead of harming herself, in the end, her fantasies harm other people. And that's what I think to me at least, probably not purposely, but to me at least, that's what the movie is about. It's about the harm being in the closet can cause only, it's an allegory, so they make it external harm, her harming other people instead of her harming herself. Um, so this, of course, brings up the topic of, is this good representation of asexuality and aegosexuality, or is it bad representation? On the one hand, it gets a lot of stuff right. Like the fantasies, as I pointed out, don't include herself. That's spot on. She's clearly not attracted to other people. That's spot on. She's clearly into certain sexual ideas, but not drawn to other people. That's spot on. She clearly is a queer character. That's spot on. She clearly is made to feel very uncomfortable when other people expect her to act more straight. That's spot on. Being in the closet is causing her harm. That's spot on. So far sounds like good rep. But on the other hand, her sexual fantasies do cause harm. She is violent at the end of the film. She is a bad guy. She does hurt people. Her sexual fantasies are extreme and extremely dangerous, and the film is very disturbing. So, is that bad rep then? Well, here's the rub. It's representation. Right now, for my specific micro label of aegosexuality and asexuality specifically, it's the only representation. You can complain about bad rep. You can complain about not getting of having a bad rep. But if you have enough rep, if you have enough characters, if you have enough examples, a bad rep stops mattering as much because you have good rep and you have okay rep and you have characters you relate to and you have characters that you don't relate to. I want to see an egosexual, asexual movie I'm like, I don't relate to that guy at all. They're annoying. I don't like them. That's not going to happen. But that's my point. If you have more rep, it's always better. You can have mixed feelings on characters, but it's always better. Having a voice and talking about these topics, even if you get these topics wrong, even if you're a writer and you're writing about something and you feel, man, I'm passionate about this, but what if I get it wrong? What if the person that I'm writing about experiences my queerdom in a different way and I represent it wrong and I fuck up? Dude, person, you're giving them more rep. You could fuck up, you could screw up, but there's now a new example, and there's more examples, and there's more examples, and there's more examples. And it gets to the point where that's what matters. And this is an ultra disturbing movie. This is not going to be a relatable content for a lot of people, but it is content. It is something to represent. And if you have enough representation, you can break down the propaganda and the eraser that a lot of other people are purposely doing. So I like this movie because it's representation. It's not necessarily good representation, but I like this movie because the main character is ego, or perhaps accidentally so. And I can't relate to the character because they're violent, because they're a bad guy, because their sexual fantasies are extremely dangerous, and I don't have those same sexual fantasies. But it's still rep. And I'm glad I have it. And I want to do what I can to to celebrate the rep while this world still has it, because a lot of people don't want this world to have it. So in a couple of months, when Trump fully gets in and he makes all the laws that he does and he deports a whole lot of people and probably collapses the economy, and he doubles down because of all of his missteps into hating queer community more and more, so he has someone to blame for his missteps, and the propaganda really starts to sink in. It's already sunk in a lot, but it really starts to sink in, and Netflix buys into the mentality that, hey, let's sell to those guys a little bit more. When all that goes down, I'm going to just speak more, and I'm just going to like my ultra disturbing horror movie with the aegosexual lead, and I'm just going to keep stressing and just keep talking and never shut upping about liking stupid smutty books about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and being very asexual while doing it. So this has been an odd talk, but if you are up to ultra disturbing films, and you want to see an oddball representation of asexual, but you're okay with a violent ace character, maybe you should give this movie a try. Anyways, I just wanted to say all that, and I just wanted to say, if you feel bad, I got your back. We all gotta get each other's backs. Take care and enjoy your extreme and extremely controversial stuff that you don't actually want to talk about, but you do really want to talk about. Have a good night and good luck to us all.